Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. People of Masjid Salam, do not repeat. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah ala ihsanih wa shukru lahu ala tafaddulihi wa imtinanih wa la ilaha illallah ta'dhiman li sha'nih wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu da'i ila ridwanih wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa ikhwani amma ba'd. Ikhwani fillah, question number 1. What is required of a Muslim when they're on their deathbed? How do you tell them to say La ilaha illallah? What is the character or the behavior that's required of you that is telling the person who is dying, say La ilaha illallah when they're dying? Question number 2. Is it part of what is prescribed to recite Surah Yasin to the person who is dying? Question number 3. What are some other issues regarding death that people make a lot of mistakes in? These are some of the questions, Ikhwani fillah, we shall look at tonight. Imam Muslim narrates from the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam says, لَقِّنُوا مَوْتَاكُمْ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. When a person is dying, your fellow brother, your fellow sister in Islam, you're supposed to say to them, say La ilaha illallah. Say La ilaha illallah. Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu anhu, he says, إِذَا حُذِرَ الْمَيِّتِ فَلَقِّنُوهُ لَا إِلَهَ illallah. When you're present, when someone is dying, say to them, say La ilaha illallah. فإنه ما من عبد يختم له بها عند موته إلا كانت زاده إلى الجنة. There's no servant of Allah whose last words will be La ilaha illallah except that will give them, it will be a supply or something that will assist them in their journey to Akhirah. The scholars, they say that this is a sunnah. It is prescribed when you see someone who is dying, you say to them, La ilaha illallah. As the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he says in authentic hadith, Man kana akhiru kalamihi, La ilaha illallah, dakhala al-jannah. Type. A mistake that people do is the person who is dying has already said La ilaha illallah. Then you start repeating it every time until it irritates that person and he says something else. So from the mistakes people do, Ikhwani fillah, if someone who is dying has already said La ilaha illallah, leave it at that. Don't increase it more. He has already said La ilaha illallah, that is sufficient. There's no need for him to say 10 times, 20 times. Do not anger the person who is saying La ilaha illallah. Do not make any reason for that person to get angry with you and they say something else that will make Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala angry. So the person is required to only say La ilaha illallah once. You don't need to repeat it. Type. Imam Ibn al-Mubarak, he says, لَقِّنُوا الْمَيِّتَ لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا فَإِذَا قَالَهَا فَدَّعُوهُ. Imam Ibn al-Mubarak, he says, say to the one who's dying, La ilaha illallah. If he says it, leave him alone. He himself, when he was dying, he says to his colleague Al-Hasan ibn Isa, لَقِّنِي الشهادة ولا تعود علي إلا أن أتكلم بكلام ثاني. So the scholars, they say that if a person is dying, you say to them, say La ilaha illallah, say it only once and do not repeat. Also do not command them. Do not be like, say La ilaha illallah until they get angry with you. You know, many people, they look at the messenger, they don't look at the message. The message might be true, but how you give that message to the person really affects the person in accepting it or rejecting it. This is the majority of the people. Others are smart. They don't care about the bad behavior of the person bringing the message. They follow the message. But some people, they get irritated. If he said to me in a bad way, I'm not going to say it. Who is he to say? So they start bringing their personal ego, and that prevents them from saying La ilaha illallah. So be kind, be soft. Just say to the person who's dying, La ilaha illallah, La ilaha illallah. perhaps when they wake up and they start understanding you, they say, La ilaha illallah. And they die upon that state. Don't use the command language. Say, La ilaha illallah. Don't use that even what that say. Just say, La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah a number of times. And if that person hears it, they, inshallah, will repeat it and die upon that state. Some of the scholars, they used to be shy to say La ilaha illallah in the presence of a scholar who's about to die. For example, we mentioned the story of the Imam Abu Zur'a al-Razi, rahimahullah, who passed away in the year 264 of the Hijri calendar. When this man was about to die, he had 3 of his colleagues from the scholars next to him. Imam Abu Hatim al-Razi, Muhammad ibn Idris al-Handali. Number 2, he had Muhammad ibn Muslim al-Warra, and number 3, he had Al-Mundhir ibn Shadhan. 3 scholars were next to him. So they all felt shy. How are we supposed to say to this Imam, say La ilaha illallah? This is a person who has been living his entire life upon La ilaha illallah. So the first scholar, Muhammad ibn Muslim al-Warra, he says, let us remind each other about hadith of Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So he says, قال حدثنا أبو عاصم الضحاك بن مخلد قال حدثنا عبد الحميد ابن جعفر عن صالح ابن أبي. He stops there. The chain of narration, the sanad, he stops there. Abu Hatim al-Razi, he takes over. He says, قال حدثنا بندر محمد بن بشار قال حدثنا أبو عاصم الضحاك بن مخلد قال حدثنا عبد الحميد بن جعفر عن صالح ابن. And he stops there. Abu Zur'a rahimahullah, who was having the pain of sakaratul maut, he wakes up and he thinks his brothers in hadith, they're mistaken or they have erred or they have made a mistake. So he says, حدثنا بندر محمد بن بشار قال حدثنا جعفر قال حدثنا عبد الحميد بن جعفر عن صالح بن غريب عن كثير بن مرة عن معاذ بن جبل عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من كان آخر كلامه لا إله إلا الله دخل الجنة وتوفي رحمه الله. He said the hadith as mentioned by the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, whoever's last words is La ilaha illallah, they shall enter paradise. And he died rahimahullah, and his last words contained the words La ilaha illallah. He says, Abdullah ibn Shubruma, that he entered with Amir al-Sha'bi ala maridin, upon a sick person. And the person who was with him was saying to him with such force, say La ilaha illallah, say La ilaha illallah. The person will say to him, Ma nasituhu fa'udhakiruh. I did not forget it for you to remind me in such a manner. I did not forget it for you to remind me in such a manner. So be kind, be very soft to the person who's dying. Do not be harsh to them. Do not command them. Just say to them, La ilaha illallah, in the most softest and the politest way that you can say, Ikhwani fillah. Also, Ikhwani fillah, when a person is dying, do not overpraise them. You are so and so, you are such a good person. Do not overpraise them. As for the sunnah, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, إِذَا حَضَرْتُمُ الْمَرِيضَ أَوْ الْمَيِّتِ فَقُولُوا خَيْرًا. When you're present, when a person is dying, say good things. فَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ يُؤَمِّنُونَ عَلَى مَا تَقُولُونَ. The angels are present at that time. And they say, Ameen to everything that you say. So a person is dying, yes, speak good words, but do not exaggerate. Do not go overboard until this person becomes arrogant or prideful. Just something good, make dua for them, and the angels will answer that dua. Also, the Prophet ﷺ, he says that when the soul is taken, the eyesight follows. The soul is taken, the eyesight follows. So do not make any dua upon that time when the soul is taken except a good dua. When someone dies because of the bereavement or the calamity that has befallen us, we forget and we speak sometimes bad words. Be very careful. That time is very critical. That is the best time to say a good dua. That is the time to pray for the person who's dying. For how many angels are present at that time, taking the soul and giving the soul. The Malakul Maut is there, and the assistant angels, the angels of Rahmah also are there. So make a lot of dua at that time. As such, the scholars, they prefer when someone is about to die, let the righteous people be there. The salihun, the people who are known for their piety and their righteousness, let them be present there. Let them make dua, for the angels will say Ameen to the dua. Also, ikhwani fillah, the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, he says, إِذَا حَضَرْتُم مَوْتَاكُمْ فَاغْمِضُوا الْبَصَرِ. He says, when a person dies and the soul has been taken, you are supposed to close the eyes of the person who is dead. After they die, of course. Close their eyes. It says, فَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ تُؤَمِّنُ عَلَى مَا قَالَ أَهْلُ الْبَيْتِ. Then make dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will answer that dua. So, ikhwani fillah, we've said number one, with the issue of saying to the person who's dying, La ilaha illallah. Do not command. Be polite. If they say it once, that is sufficient. Don't need to repeat. No need to repeat. The second issue, ikhwani fillah, the issue of Surah Yasin. When someone is dying, is it prescribed for a Muslim to recite Surah Yasin to the person who's dying? The majority of the scholars from the Hanafiya, the Shafi'iyya, and the Hanabila, they say it is recommended to read Surah Yasin to the person whose death has come upon them. And they mention a number of hadith, but all these hadiths are weak hadiths. This is the opinion of the majority of the scholars, that you recite Surah Yasin to the person who's dying, not to the person who's dead, to the person who is dying. Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, it's mentioned in a hadith, it's a weak hadith, he says, Iqra'u Yasin ala mawtakum. Recite Yasin to the people who are dying from amongst yourselves. Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah, he says in Al-Adhkar that this hadith has ittirab. It is a hadith that is, the chain of narration is not strong. It's a weak hadith. Shaykh al-Islam Ahmed ibn Taymiyyah, he says also that this is the correct opinion, that it's prescribed or it's recommended for you to recite Surah Yasin to the one who's dying. وَالْقِرَاءَةُ عَلَى الْمَيِّتِ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهِ بِدْعَةٌ. And to recite Surah Yasin upon the dead person after their death is an innovation. It is not part of our religion. Then he continues, he says, وَذَهَبَ إِمَامْ مَالِكْ رَحِمَهُ اللَّهِ. That Imam Malik, he says that it is disliked for you to read Surah Yasin or any other surah to the person who's dying, because not a single hadith has been confirmed regarding that, and that is not the way of the people of Medina. And no people of the people of Medina, the children of the Sahaba, they were not doing such a thing. So, ikhwani fillah, depending on what you see this hadith being, if this hadith is strong to you, then Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen, he says, you can recite Surah Yasin to the person who's dying. And this, if you take this hadith to be weak, and indeed it's a weak hadith, then it is not prescribed for you to read Surah Yasin to the one who's dying. A question comes, ikhwani fillah. Sometimes a hadith is a weak hadith. But if you look at the general evidences, is it prescribed for you to read the Quran to your fellow Muslim? The Prophet ﷺ, one day he comes and he meets Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and says, recite for me from the Quran. He says, I recite upon you, and it was you that it was revealed upon the Quran. He says, I love to hear the recitation of other than myself. So Ibn Mas'ud, as you all know, he recited from Surah An-Nisa until he reached a verse where the Prophet ﷺ shall be brought as a witness on the day of judgment. And the Prophet ﷺ started crying tears. So it is allowed for you to recite the Quran, or to read the Quran, or for someone to listen to the Quran. As for saying that Surah Yasin in particular, that hadith is not strong according to the scholars of hadith, but the majority of the scholars from the fuqaha, they take that hadith, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Ikhwani, other final issues regarding death. We mentioned previously that what dies is the body. What dies is the body. You are created, you have two things. You have a body, you have a soul. Your soul is removed from your body. That act of removing your soul or disconnecting your soul from the body, that is called death. So it is the body that dies, not the soul. He says, يستحب عند الاحتضار الميت توجيه للقبلة بإجماع العلماء. It is recommended for the person who is dying to face the Qibla. And there's no khilaf amongst the Muslims with regards to this. He says, يستحب تلقينه الشهادة. It is prescribed or recommended for you to tell the person who is dying, say La ilaha illallah, but do not force and do not command for them to say that. He continues, he says, it is also recommended for you to close the eyes of the person who's died. Also, it's allowed, ikhwani fillah, for someone who's died, you come and uncover their face and you kiss their forehead. As when the Prophet ﷺ, he died, and the Muslims, they started crying a lot. Abu Bakr was in a different area. He comes, he uncovers the sheet that the Prophet ﷺ, and he kisses the forehead of the Prophet ﷺ, and he says, "Tibta hayyan wa mayitan." You are smelling good, or you are very good when you are alive and when you are dead. So you are allowed to kiss the forehead of the person who has died, but it has to be, of course, not from the opposite. Naam. Also, it's allowed to announce to the people that someone has passed away, so that they can make dua, they can be present for the Salat al-Janazah. What is not allowed as a Muslim is to start making a lot of noise, a lot of crying, shouting, slapping your face, cutting off your clothes, and doing the things of the Jahiliyyah. When death has been prescribed for everyone. It's written by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Regardless of how you die. Yes, it's very painful, ikhwani fillah, when you hear someone who is beloved to you has died in a manner that you are not expecting. A manner that hurts you a lot. But know one thing, ikhwani fillah, that death of that person was written in that particular time, in that particular manner. It was written by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That person was to be eaten by a lion, it was written. That person was assassinated, it was written. That person was to die in a car accident, in a fire, all this is written. So be aware of how you react to the news of a calamity. With regards to the woman whose husband has died, then she's supposed not to beautify herself the way a woman beautifies herself for marriage, or beautifying herself in a manner that will give someone a second look at her. She should not beautify herself with any makeup or any perfume or anything of that sort. It's compulsory upon the wife of the man who's died, or the divorced wife who is divorced a first or a second divorce. She has to remain in the house for 4 months and 10 days. When does this time begin? It begins when she has knowledge that that man has passed away. So sometimes, most of the times, it's usually he's died today, the day begins today. She has to count 4 months and 10 days from today. Sometimes she receives the news after a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. She begins that time 3 weeks, but she does not count 4 months from that day. She counts 4 months and 10 days from the day that that man passed away. She should not sleep outside the husband's house. She should not go and sleep, I'm going to my dad's house or mom's house. She should stay in the house of the husband. She's allowed to go outside the house for her necessities like education, work, hospital, shopping, or that is necessary for her. She is allowed to visit other women, to go to the hospital to visit them, but she should not put any makeup or any beautification. She should not put any perfume. Then here is one opinion that you usually find very strange. وَلَا تَشْرَبُ كَهْوَةً فِيهَا زَعْفَرَانٍ لِأَنَّهُ مِنَ الطِّيبِ. The scholar, he says that she should not even drink coffee that has saffron, for it is perfume. I disagree with this opinion because this is not perfume in any language. Drinking coffee that has za'faran, that has saffron, is not perfume in any language, and no one considers it perfume. Also in Hajj, when you go for Hajj, the muhrim is not supposed to keep perfume. That is perfume on the body. But if you take coffee or tea with na'na, with mint, or with za'faran, that is not perfume in any language in the world. Are we together? So it's not counted as perfume. He says she's allowed to use shampoo or anything to clean her body. She's allowed to comb her hair, to use oil and lotions. She's not allowed to put henna. She's not allowed to put on her gold. And she's allowed to wear anything that she wishes except beautiful clothes that attract attention. Some foolish things that people believe. He says, the Sheikh, some foolish things that people believe, that the woman is not allowed to go on the first floor of the building of the husband. He says this has no basis. Number two, she's not allowed to look at the moon. This has no basis. Number three, she's not allowed to talk to any man. This has no basis. She can talk to any man, a doctor, her brother, her father, of course within the prohibitions of Sharia. She should not trespass those prohibitions. So, Ikhwani fillah, these are some issues regarding the person who dies. We said, number one, you say to them, La ilaha illallah, in a polite manner. Do not repeat, do not be harsh, be very kind to them. When they die, you close the eyes. You can recite to them Surah Yasin according to the majority of the scholars. But the correct opinion, the strong opinion is that hadith is weak. But you can, it's good to listen to the Quran. So you can let them listen to Quran, there's no harm. The woman who's died, we have looked at the issues related to that. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Any questions? Naam Sharif.
That's the woman or a husband who died.
Yes.
What about the woman that has been divorced? She's supposed to stay in the, we have a culture in our Islamic around, maybe in East Africa. A woman, the time is divorced, she always leaves home.
That is a big mistake that I've seen a lot in our society in Kenya, especially. Can talk about Kenya because I'm in Kenya. A woman who's divorced, she should stay in the house for the iddah. Number two, sometimes there's a problem between the husband and the wife. The wife packs her bags and goes to the father's house. And most fathers in our generation, I don't know what wisdom they were taught, they allow for the daughter to stay in the house. Unless there is the danger to her life, then allow her to stay in the house. Otherwise, tell her, my dear daughter, please go back to your house. We'll come and deal with your issue at your house. It is big dhulma. Some fathers, you're giving your daughter away, then you allow your daughter to come stay in your house. Why? That is a mistake. If there's a battle between them two, let them go in the house. We'll come after 4 days, 5 days, even give it time. Because a husband and a wife, ikhwani fillah, like two children. They're like what? Two children. Allow them to fight. After 10 minutes, after 2 days, they'll be the best of friends. Once people start interfering, especially sisters, mothers, aunties, friends, uncles, and such other people, they bring destruction to the house. The level of divorce in Kenya right now, the sheikhs, they say it's very high. So, stay in that house. If she's divorced, let her stay in that house. Perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yuhdithu ba'da dhalika amra. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might bring reconciliation. Why are you blocking reconciliation from happening? So a divorced woman should stay in the husband's house for 3 months. She should beautify herself. And if the husband takes her back with action or with a saying and he has witnesses, it is accepted as per the Sharia. Any other questions? If she's kicked out. Number two, you're not allowed to kick the woman out of the house. Why? Even if you have bought the house, even if the mortgage or the title deed is under your name, the house is not yours, the house is for the woman. Are we together? The house is not yours, the house is for the woman. If you have 4 wives, each wife has their own house. It's not your house. You are the stranger. You're the one who should be kicked out. If there's anyone who should be kicked out, it's you. وَلَا تُخْرِجُهُنَّ مِن بُيُوتِهِنَّ. Allah says, do not remove them from their houses. Not from your houses, from their houses. Naam. If the husband? She can walk, she can walk. No, she can. We said some things that are allowed, like shopping, hospital, working, and such thing. Then they can stay home. If the woman is pregnant, then it's more than 4 months and 10 days the iddah until she gives birth. Until she gives birth. Any other questions? Now.
About the kissing of the forehead.
You understood, that's just jokes. You understood completely. You understood. Also, Ikhwani Fillah, a funny issue. It's not funny actually. Who knows the dua for janaza, for a woman? What's the dua? Allahumma ighfir laha? Continue. وَابْدِلْهَا زَوْجًا خَيْرًا مِنْ زَوْجِهَا. Are you supposed to say this, by the way? Oh Allah, give her a husband better than a husband. Is that not a crime upon me as a man? That's my wife. Why are you making that dua for my wife? So some scholars, they say delete this part of the dua. زَوْجًا خَيْرًا مِنْ زَوْجِهَا. Why? I want my wife. She's my wife in dunya. I want her also in Jannah. So don't make dua for your brother who's passed away that he becomes someone else's wife in Jannah. Another issue, it is allowed, sometimes in the janaza, when the wife dies, you as the man, you're allowed to wash your wife. Also the wife is allowed to wash the husband, because there's no aura between husband and wife. Any other question? Naam Haji. That's a good question. If a woman is married, then the husband dies, then she remarries. The scholars have differed. There's a hadith that says she'll be the husband will be the last husband will be her husband in Jannah. But some scholars have differed. So we do not know the correct opinion. Most of the scholars, they say it's the second, it's the last man. For example, Salama, she was married, this one is not controversial, this one is definite. Salama was married to Abu Salama, then Abu Salama died, then she got married to the Prophet ﷺ. In Jannah, she'll be the wife of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, and that was the last husband. Someone like Asma bint Umays, she was married to Ja'far ibn Abi Talib, then she got married to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, then married to Ali. I think Ali was the last husband. So most likely the husband of her in Jannah will be Ali ibn Abi Talib, but Allah knows best. Allah knows best. And there's no jealousy in Jannah, ikhwani fillah. You have the wives from the Hur al-Ain. You have at least 2 wives from the Hur al-Ain. Then you have your wives in dunya who shall be your wives in akhirah, and they are more beautiful than the Hur al-Ain. And there's a hadith, wallahu alam if it's authentic, the shaheed has 72 wives. So if one goes, no comment. Huh? If you want more, whatever in Jannah you'll get. Whatever you want in Jannah, you will get. And the women in Jannah are very beautiful. You can come, Ibn al-Qayyim says, you come and look at your wife, you're surprised by her beauty. You look at her for 40 years. You look at her for 40 years, just amazed by her beauty. And every day you see her, she's even more beautiful than you left her. Her scarf is better than the dunya and everything within it. And she sings to you in Jannah, ikhwani fillah. And you're given the strength of 100 men when it comes to the issue of the issue of marriage. So you spend 1 million years with one wife, 1 million years, then you go visit the Prophet. Jannah, alhamdulillah, has no time or no. Perhaps that's another opinion, that the woman who had more than one husband shall be given a choice to choose. Another opinion I can say, wallahu alam, I've never seen it from the scholars, but perhaps Allah can make 2 of the same women, no problem. Twins, they look the same, you have and that one has, possible. It's possible with Allah. It's not Allah, it's possible. Naam, final question, Naam, Hamid Nur. That's okay.
Instead of this, the general.
Then that one is okay. You can say that one. Naam akhi. Just behind you first, then yourself. Naam. There are 2 types of divorces. There's the divorce that she can return back to be wife, and there's the divorce that she cannot return back. So the divorce that she can return back, she has to stay 4 months and 10 days. Why? Because there's a possibility that that dying person would have taken her back. Then there's a divorce that is the last one, the third one. That one she stays the iddah of 3 periods. But some scholars, they say, even this woman who has been divorced, final divorce, we shall look at the issue of inheritance again. Because that man perhaps was divorcing her to prevent her from getting inheritance. So we'll do something called naqidu qasd. So that man, yes, he divorced that woman, but we have some suspicion that he did that to prevent this woman from inheriting his wealth. So we shall give that woman her inheritance, a share of a quarter or an eighth, depending on the Sharia. Now, we're done with questions. Right hand. Now. Haji, you have a question, inshallah. He was before you. Okay. Yes. I don't know. That's a scientific question, maybe. I don't know. May I know how closing the eyes like this? If you fail to do like this, may I don't know any other way. The eyes have refused to close. Then maybe you can ask the doctors how to do it. The engineer, how do you do it? You put some calipers. Yes, after dying. Did you say that? You didn't say that. No, you didn't say that. He's already died. He's in the mortuary. The eyes are still like this. So he's trying to retire and it refuses. You can't force. You cannot. You can't force. Whatever, but I don't know if it will work. If it can work, use it. But don't use force. Back at the person, you mutilate his body. It's not his also. Still his respect. You can't humiliate his body. Haji, then yourself. Bismillah. In Jannah, there's dua. You say, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, الذي صدقنا وعده وأورثنا الأرض نتبوأ من الجنة حيث نشاء فنعم أجر العاملين. You just say that perhaps there's Quran, there's no ibadah, the ibadah is this tasbih and thanking Allah and praising Allah. Now. That's a good question. Is the dying person supposed to say the entire shahadatain or just the first shahada? If he says both, it's okay. But what's required is the first part that's related to Tawheed. La ilaha illallah. La ma'buda bihaqqin illallah. This is Tawheed. To bear witness there's no deity of worship, worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the most important. If he completes, mashallah. Some people die, subhanallah, they are reciting the Quran. And they die upon that state. They already said La ilaha illallah, then they continue reciting the Quran. So, mashallah, some people are strong. But some people, you have to understand, that person, I don't know if you have gone to an operation room where someone is done for surgery. With all those anesthesia and that alcohol that is in the body, they can't understand anything. Their head is going around like this. Sakarat. This is called sakaratul maut. The head is intoxicated. You don't understand what's going on. Then some foolish person over there is shouting at you, say, La ilaha illallah. You're confusing the person. Be soft, be kind, be polite. That person, if he understands once, enough. Don't repeat it again. Final question, Haji. Naam, Sharifa.
Inshallah, if Allah if we meet in Jannah, inshallah,
Amen.
and you want to visit some of your friends, or maybe the Sahaba or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you want to visit with your Quran. Is he supposed to wear hijab?
That should be recorded as the funniest question of the year. Number one, when it comes to Jannah, we're going to take it later. Jannah, the people who are high can visit the ones who are down. The ones who are down have to go up with an invitation. They just can't go up and visit anyone. As for hijab and such things, of course she'll wear respectfully in Jannah, of course, she'll wear it, because she's still a woman, but as for the issue of niqab and gloves, I don't know. I do not know. Now, any other question? وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.